to another Book Nook. This is November's edition. Today we're talking about all things astral, and I'm here with Bryan Prosek, author of Measure of Serenity, The Brighter the Stars, and the most recently released The Darker the Skies, which came out November 8th. Welcome, Bryan. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hey, thanks, Jordan. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
And I'm so excited to talk about your new release. But first, let's talk a little bit about you. Can you tell me about yourself?
Sure. So I'm from the States, live in Columbus, Ohio, with my wife, and we have two kids. And I, in my day job, I guess you'd call it, I'm an attorney, a corporate transactional attorney, and then just love to write. So write whenever I have the time.
I love that. Attorney by day, author by night. And can you catch us up to speed? Because The Darker the Skies is the sequel in your duology. Can you catch me up to speed with what's happened in the story so far?
Right. Yep. So it's actually going to be a trilogy. So it's the Earth United trilogy. So we still have a third one to come, which readers will see at the end of The Darker the Skies. It kind of sets it up for the third book. But to answer your question, so in the first book, The Brighter the Stars, we kind of our main character through all this, our protagonist is Jake Saunders, who starts out. We actually start out as a little boy in The Brighter the Stars, who witnesses his uncle's death at the hands of a leader of another planet in the galaxy. And this all takes place, all the books, this takes place in the Milky Way galaxy, our galaxy. And so then the book jumps ahead to where Jake is in the Earth's military and has a lot of different things going on. He's trying to deal with growing up, basically, even though this is in the future, and he's in the military, and it's very outer space alien type book, but it still tries to touch on issues of young adult growing up, dealing with struggles between his career and his personal life. He meets a girl and falls in love, but yet he's still he's consumed by the vengeance of trying to make things right for the death of his uncle. And in all this, he and his friends get caught in this conspiracy on Earth that and end up having to trying to struggle between what's following his orders versus what he knows he needs to do to kind of save Earth. So it kind of takes everything from our current life and perspective of maybe one country versus another country, being in the military and having allies, and takes it to a space level where you have one planet versus another planet, and everything's just at a broader level. But we try to kind of touch on issues of a young adult. And so that's kind of so the book, The Brighter the Stars, progresses through his kind of growing up and maturing, and at the same time, obviously the fun and action of the book is a lot of space battles, conspiracy, figuring out who to trust, who not to trust, and a love story kind of mixed in with it.
I love that. It really is a bit of everything. And you've got the heart wants what it wants, the head knows what it needs to do, and then your superiors are telling you another thing. Like, there are so many different ways that this poor character is being pulled. And I do love what you were saying, where you've taken it to the skies, you've taken it to space, but you're still able to focus in on those very real kind of human themes. And I found when I was reading it, it was almost like the setting helped you focus on those themes, because we've kind of been taken out of our comfort zone, and we can really get to the heart of the concerns, the preoccupations, and the joys that come with living a life of space mission ship.
Right. Yeah. No, that's a good way to describe it, Jordan. No, you picked it up perfectly from reading it. That's exactly it. In fact, the heart versus the mind is right. It is mentioned in there, push and pull with that, and Jake's struggles. Yep.
Oh, I love good old Jake. And then without giving too much away, can you tell us a little bit about what to expect in the Dark of the Skies?
Right. So the darker the skies, then, so at the end of the brighter the stars, we kind of everything wraps up and works out. Jake ends up with his love interest. He gets his vengeance and defeats the I guess ruler of Kraton that had killed his uncle. And so we jump a year ahead now in the darker the skies, and we pick up kind of then where that left off, and kind of so in the brighter the stars, behind the scene, besides the main villain, there's this behind the scenes character Sloan, who was always kind of the puppet master, I guess, as you will, pulling the strings of the different leaders of different planets. And so in the darker the skies, he becomes kind of your main villain or main opponent of Jake's, although he still uses other people. And we get a lot more of a backstory of him and where he comes from. And there's a whole nother kind of dimension we pull into the book. There was an old guy just briefly in the first book that you'll see in The Darker the Skies. It has a bigger role, and him and Sloan have a history. So I tried to make it so instead of just picking up and just another space odyssey, space adventure, it has a little bit more of a history behind it, and it digs into there's more in Jake's past with this Sloan protagonist who's very difficult to defeat. And so this book is again kind of Sloan taking another attempt to take over Earth and the galaxy, but in a far more aggressive manner. And it's a little bit darker in that some more, I guess, quote, bad things happen. And so that's kind of without giving away. That's where the darker the skies goes. It has an exciting ending, and I think and from what people that have read it have said they've really enjoyed and can't wait to see the how things wrap up in the third book.
Fantastic. And that's the beauty of the trilogy, is that you can, like, you've set up your world and your characters and the galaxies in the first one, and now you can really deep dive into a lot of the themes and a lot of the character backstories, and also, like you said, pick up on that character that wasn't really a big deal in the first one, but now he's coming back in a very big way.
Exactly. No, you're right, Jordan, and that makes it. I think both. I think writing the second book makes it a little. That makes being the second book makes it a little easier in that sense, because right, you've built everything already, and so right, you can dive deeper. But on the other hand, I found the second book also becomes a little more difficult because you don't want to just do the same thing you did in the first book. So you're trying to stretch everyone a little further and a little deeper and hit on some other tones. But it's fun. So it was fun to write.
Oh, exciting. And then what drew you to set your trilogy in space?
Yeah, that's a good question. So with the brighter the stars be, so it dates back to that obviously, and that was the first book I'd written, and I think I don't think there's any like one thing. With just growing up as a sci-fi fan, whether it was movies, TV, books, that was my thing. And when I think of sci-fi, I think of outer space, and that's kind of my kind of favorite part of science fiction. So I think just doing my first book, I just wanted that kind of to that as the setting, and probably had the most interest in kind of an outer space type adventure story. So I think that's kind of how it came about to be set as it was.
Oh, I love that. And yeah, it's so important to write what you're passionate about, because it bleeds through from the words into your reader, and then we get passionate about the world that you're creating. So
Right.
that's fantastic. And did you have a favorite part about setting your work within the stars and the galaxies and the Milky Way?
Yeah, I think, and that just a good segue from the first question, because the other thing I like about that is well, let's take a step back. Science fiction obviously covers a lot, a pretty broad area. I mean, science fiction can be a future Earth, it could be a past Earth that's different, it could be an alternate Earth, or just some other place and time, or you can get into push into fantasy, other worlds. So there's a lot of things that are in the genre of science fiction, and then outer space being one of them. What I like about writing this book and about writing outer space is that it's so vast, you can really let your imagination go. So you can take everyone to the stars, you can go into other galaxies as far as you want, you can make up whatever planets, whatever races and beings that you want. So it really, I think it really lends itself to a wild imagination, which makes it really fun to write.
Oh, fantastic. And what I loved about the way you write about, the different spaceships and the different kind of the jargon that you use sounded spacey, sci-fi, and quantum realm, leap, blaster enough that I was excited to learn what these things were, but they were also realistic enough that I'm like, yeah, there could be this thing that exists in however many years in the future.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, and I enjoyed, and that's kind of a little bit of the difficulty in writing about using I guess you'd say made up technology, futuristic technology, is how do you make it so it's still realistic and name it something that's realistic and different from what you'd call the same type of weapon today, whether it's a weapon or technology. And so right, it makes it again fun to think it up, but challenging to come up with the terminology and description.
Yes, because you definitely don't want to be the person who writes star shooter blaster thing. Like it does need
Right,
to.
exactly.
And speaking of the various challenges, were there any major challenges that you found while setting your characters in outer space?
Probably I was trying to think, the kind of what we're talking about, the world building and in technology, what would be kind of, I guess that would be, if there is a challenge, is exactly that, to keep it like I say, keep it realistic for what it would be in the future. Not, it's young adult, so it doesn't have to be too out there. If you read like Hail Mary or The Martian, you get some really detailed scientific technology, which is I mean, super love those books, but you try to keep it so it doesn't go too far. And also you're trying the other challenge is doing the world building, where you're describing in detail and giving everyone, so that as they read, they get the picture of what what your imagination has created for this world, but not get too bogged down in the details. You've also read books where it's just kind of page after page of this scientific description of what's on this planet, but you don't want to get the reader bored with that, and you lose track of the story. So it's kind of that challenge of building the world and the future without getting bogged down in it.
And it's such a fine line. It's actually, I was talking to a friend about this recently. It's like the J.R.R. Tolkien tree phenomenon, where he's really interested in trees, but maybe he should have considered that not all of his readers would be as interested in trees.
Exactly. Yes.
Not that the trees aren't interesting, but some of them don't need pages of detail.
Yeah, exactly. That's a
And
great thing.
and jumping back to what we were saying at the very beginning about how you've got this character that has grown up in a lot of ways, and now starting in The Darker the Skies, he's got this love interest that he's hoping to propose to. How would you say the setting that you've created has affected your characters that you write about?
Yeah, I would say the one thing that it's done by making this an outer space adventure, all the characters and everything, all the conflicts, kind of, especially in the Darker the Skies, occurs off planet and in space. And so everyone, all the characters are connected to the military somehow. So it's hard to it's made it difficult to have um, a lot of different personalities and backstories and so forth with characters when they're all somehow connected to the military. Because even, you look at anyone in the military today, they all have this, a Navy SEAL, probably there's, if you put 10 of them in a row, you couldn't tell them apart as far as, their, who they are and their personality. So that made it difficult by setting it in space and with the military is trying to get some different depth between the characters. There's a lot of consistency among, where they came from, who they are, what their personality is. So I think that was probably the hardest thing to write, with it being based on, because of the setting I put it in.
And I really like how you kept that balance of the kind of private lives and the public lives of your characters. I mean, even in the opening scene of the Dark of the Skies, where it's kind of a flashback to what was happening with Jake's father, I really liked how it's a very small scene in and of itself, but you've got this sense of a man who is so duty bound and like invested in space exploration and loving that he's doing this job, but he's also a very loving father, and he's got this the weight of the regret of not being able to be there for his son. I mean, yes, these characters are very military focused, but I loved how you were able to give us glimpses of the home life, even if it was just a short flashback at the very beginning of the book.
Gotcha. No, that's a good. I appreciate that. That's a good pickup. You did a good reading job.
And did you have a favorite character to write?
Yeah, so that one's an easy one, and that's Frank Cantor. I love he's the well, in the Darker the Skies, a commander, and kind of, kind of the top commander. He grew through the Brighter the Stars, but I love writing him because I've made his character tie back to the old Western days of the U.S. So he wherever he gets them from, he still watches movies, John Wayne movies, Clint Eastwood movies. So I have so his he talks like that. He wears a Stetson cap. He chews on a cigar. So I love writing him because it kind of gets some humor into the story with him.
Oh, I love that. Well, and some characters I find I take a while to really get a read on how to kind of relate to them, but he was such a breath of fresh air that it was kind of like almost like a Haggard character, where as soon as Haggard comes on, you're like, I know how tall he is, I know that he's what he's wearing, I know the way his voice sounds. That was kind of him. Like, he just had a presence in your book.
Gotcha. Yeah, yes, exactly. And that makes it fun, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And everybody loves a cowboy, so
That's right, exactly. You got to have a cowboy in every story, right?
yeah. Well, any good story.
A good story. There you go.
Is there any major change that you found from writing about your characters in book one to how they've changed for book two?
Book two. Probably, of course, Jake would be the biggest one, because through book one he was very immature and struggling, and but realizes, kind of grows up by the end of it, and then into book two he's realized that, and so he's kind of made a commitment not to fall back on his ways, where he kind of pushed everyone aside for his own for personal agenda. Although he again starts to struggle with that as things get difficult for him in the second book. So you'll see he kind of starts to revert back to his old ways and has more struggles. So I think so Jake for sure. Everyone else, since we just jumped a year ahead, everyone else kind of has there isn't a big difference, with the exception of our villain Sloan. So we really kind of I don't know that he's changed, but you'll learn so much more about him. He's and what his motivations are, where he came from, and what he's trying to do. And so whether I don't know if it's you call it a character change, but definitely a different take on him in the second book than the first book.
More of like a character deep dive than a change.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe. Exactly.
Oh, and I mean, especially with Jake, I loved seeing it's kind of like the lone wolf finding a pack. Like I liked that idea that in the first one he was very kind of out for himself,
Yes.
but now we see him with ideas of creating a family, and also he's got all these really close friends and allies that he can't just abandon. So it's nice to, I mean, the lone wolf trope is good, but it doesn't make for a long lasting story. So it's nice to see the wolf finding his pack.
And so in this book, right? So now he's working, and every now and then he thinks, "Oh, I'd like to do that, but hey, I know what's right, and I gotta follow that would be what I would have done before, but now I know that this is for the best of the group, so I'm going to go along with them." Until he kind of gets forced out in this book on his own, and then he's got to wing it. And that's where he starts to maybe make some decisions that I'm going to just take care of this my way now.
Yeah, it's falling into old habits, I guess.
Yes.
And is there something that you've written into your books that you're most proud of that maybe not many people would pick up on unless you told them, or something that you really geek out over?
Yeah, so I don't know that there's anything that's kind of subtle in there that people wouldn't pick up on. I try to do a mixture in writing these of like real planets versus made up planets, real galaxies versus made up galaxies. So it keeps things kind of realistic. I guess from a geek standpoint, I think the favorite thing in both of these books was my invention of the capsule, the punishment form that comes towards the end of the book. I thought that's like a really cool, and that didn't, sometimes when you think of something when you're writing science fiction or fantasy, that after you've written it, it's like, oh, now there was something similar to this in some movie I watched years ago, and that's probably what put it into my mind. But I can't think of anything like this capsule, so I was really excited about my invention of this pretty nasty form of punishment that it has like a maybe a 2% chance of actually working out fine for the victim, but the 98% chance you're gonna die a horrible death. So anyhow, that's kind of morbid, but yeah, that's kind of
I love it, and those are really bad odds.
Yes.
And do you want to go into more about the capsule, or are you wanting to keep that a surprise for readers? Because we can go either way.
Right, we can talk about, because it's just I don't there's no it doesn't give anything away in the book, and we won't say who or how many people get put into it. So the way the capsule works is when someone's convicted of whatever crime, if the punishment is it's a step down from execution, the way they look at it, because you do have this 2% chance, but it's basically a round ball that's just big enough, space capsule that's just big enough for a person to sit in. They have no control, so they can't navigate it. There's enough oxygen and food and water for 30 days. And one person programs the capsule to go in any direction from the planet, so they can send it wherever they want into space. And so they basically has booster rockets. They shoot it off, And then once it leaves the atmosphere, it's just got its inertia and just goes. There's no stopping it. And so basically it goes until either one of a couple of things happen. One, it just flies through space for 30 days and doesn't land or hit anything, and the person dies of starvation or dehydration. So that's the one bad news. The second is that it runs into an asteroid or some object that blows up. So another way you don't survive. The third, it could actually land on a planet, and the planet's either uninhabitable, there's no oxygen, or inhabited by some evil beasts, and so you die that way. But what one odds of surviving is that you actually land on an habitable planet with friendly people, and you can live out your days on that planet. So that's your chance of surviving. So I don't know. I don't know if that's shows I have a morbid mind or just a
Yes,
wild
I
imagination.
loved it.
Yeah.
It's so good because you've got the Punishers who are kind of like, well, it's off my desk, like we'll just send them off into space. But then you just imagine this poor person, and I just imagine that they couldn't really stretch out either, so it's a very
Right, exactly. Yeah,
uncomfortable
it's
30
big enough to
days.
sit in. Yeah,
Yeah.
you can't stand up even. Yeah, so you're
Where it's
sitting.
just like, please, 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 please.
Yeah, exactly. So in some ways, it's worse. In a lot of ways, it's worse than just being executed because it's going to be most likely a slow. You have a chance of living, but most likely a slow death.
Yeah, and I'm gonna guess too, you'd get some space vertigo or motion sickness from hurtling through space for so long. It would just be a terrible way to go. No, it's very
Yeah.
clever.
Okay.
I also love the glee that came
Yeah.
across your face when you were describing it.
That's. Oh.
That's like, what do they say about authors? It's like, don't check our browser history because it'll make us look like either psychopaths or serial killers.
Yeah, right. That's perfect. That's perfect.
Do you have a favorite quote or passage from either The Darker the Skies or The Brighter the Stars?
Yeah, probably. I guess from the Darker the Skies quote, I've heard it in different forms, so it wasn't something I completely made up, but it's the quote, where it comes, the quote is, if you kick a tiger in the butt, you better have a plan to deal with its teeth. So it comes into play, if you attack, if you do a surprise attack on someone or in a planet, in this case Earth, then we're strong. A tiger's strong. We're gonna turn around and retaliate. So you better have a plan to deal with that. So that was the quote that they in The Darker the Skies the president used in there. So I think that's probably my favorite out of the two books.
Oh, I love that. And I like it because, yeah, Earth in your novels, and I think in it's kind of nice to relate to the idea that our planet is quite young when it comes to space travel, just because like we are. But yeah, we're young, but we're not pushovers. We are a
Right. Yes.
tiger with teeth. Yeah.
That's exactly it. Because right now in these in The Brighter the Stars, The Darker the Skies, we've been able to space travel within the galaxy, but we haven't left the galaxy. Where, as you'll find in The Darker the Skies, there's now other galaxies, planets from other galaxies that can make it here. So it's similar to exactly that. We're young and just getting out there and exploring, but a very formidable planet.
Yeah, don't underestimate us. And so you mentioned that you've got the third one. Is it underway? What's next project-wise for you?
Right. So next project-wise so the third one is mentally there. I haven't even started to outline it, so I know we're kind of have an idea, where it's gone. I had that as I was writing The Darker the Skies, so that'll be my next project. But not the next book out. So what I've been working on between the submission between The Darker the Skies, while it's gone through the process, has been completely different. I moved it. So the first three books are all young adult. I've for the past year I've been writing a murder mystery, an adult murder mystery. So that's actually will be the next project. It's at the point where it's actually going to my beta readers right now to kind of clean it up and get it cleaned up and stuff to submit it. So that's my next thing. But then while that's in the works, then I'll come back to the third book in the Earth United trilogy.
Oh my goodness, that's so exciting. Do you have a title for the adult novel?
So the adult note right now it's called Murder on Mackinac. So
Oh,
it takes place on Mackinac Island, Michigan, and in the winter time there, which is odd because that's a summer if it's been to Mackinac. So that's what it's called right now. So we'll see. The titles my titles always tend to get changed for the better. So
yes.
my current working title, we'll see what it might end up coming out as.
So we'll watch this space.
Right, exactly.
And about this time last year, I did an interview with you about measuring Serenity.
Yeah.
Is that one getting a sequel anytime soon?
Right. So that one so I had that one planned as a duology, so just two. So I have a sequel for that one at the same stage as the third book in the Earth United trilogy. So yeah, right. So I guess it's a juggle which one gets written next. But I think I'm going with the Earth United, get the third one. Because I have it further planned out than a Measure of Serenity sequel. So I'll probably go that route and then finish up the A Measure of Serenity duology.
So exciting. And so what I'll do is I'll include your website and your Instagram information and all of the social media areas that we can find you on it, because you also have a TikTok, which leads me to my last question. Have you found the perfect cookie yet?
I have not, so I'm still looking. So if anyone watching this has their favorite cookie, I particularly like chocolate chip, but it could be any cookie. Get in touch with me as to where I can get a hold of it. Because right on my TikTok, I do cookie assessments, and exactly. So I'm looking for the perfect 10. I've hit a Crumble Cookie and Penn Station have both had 9s, but I have not found the perfect 10 yet. So
I love
yeah,
it. The quest for the perfect 10
the
cookie.
quest for the perfect 10. Yes.
Amazing. And definitely, I mean, if you're wanting a heartwarming few minutes, I love your cookie reviews because they're so thorough. I feel like you are no nonsense about it, so I'm gonna trust your opinion. But you have like so many different aspects of the cookie that you
Yes.
analyze. So it's really like, what else could you want?
Yes, I have a very rigid scale. Exactly. So it's very formal, very scientific, I guess. Yeah.
It's for science, of course. That's why you have to eat cookies.
Of course. It's not for my taste, right?
Alrighty, well, thank you so much for joining me today, Bryan. It has been an absolute pleasure. Like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, the book, The Darker the Skies, came out November 8th, so it is available now. You can get both of them, and then we have to wait so long for the third one, but that's okay. So check out Camcat, Amazon, Book Depository, anywhere that has books, you can get a copy.
Yep. No, yeah. So it looks like this.
It's so beautiful.
Hey, appreciate you having me, Jordan. It's been a lot of fun. Thanks a bunch.